The crowd inside the Jimmy Kimmel Live studio clapped and cheered as the band played a loud, exciting tune. Bright lights lit the stage. The cameras zoomed in. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. Jimmy Kimmel smiled at the camera and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Johnny Depp." Johnny walked onto the stage wearing his usual stylish look-hold leather boots, layered scarves, and dark glasses. He waved, smiled, and sat down in the guest chair. Jimmy welcomed him warmly, and for a moment, it felt like any other celebrity. Interview. The audience laughed as Jimmy joked about pirates and tattoos. But something was different about Johnny tonight. He laughed, yes, but not fully. His smile didn't reach his eyes. He sat with one leg crossed, hand on his chin, as if watching everything very closely. Jimmy didn't notice the shift right away. Kay kept the tone light, asking about Depp's latest film and making funny comments. The audience responded with laughs, but Johnny gave short answers. He was polite but distant. Then came the moment that changed everything. Jimmy brought up Depp's legal battles from the past few years. "So?" Jimmy said with a grin, "You've had quite the ... colorful journey lately. Courtrooms, headlines, Twitter wars. Do you ever just miss being a normal pirate?" The audience chuckled. Johnny didn't. He stared at Jimmy. "You think it's funny?" he asked quietly. Key, slightly caught off guard, tried to laugh it off. "Hey, I kid. It's all in good fun." Johnny leaned forward slightly. "Is it making jokes? About people's pain, about being dragged through the mud by systems more powerful than you can fight?" The audience fell silent. People shifted in their seats. Jimmy tried again to lighten the mood. "Well, I mean, it's what we do here. We poke fun. It's all part of that's the problem," Johnny cut in, voice calm but sharp. "People like you dress it up as humor. But what it really is, is control. You make jokes so no one has to look too closely." Jimmy raised his eyebrows. "Johnny, come on now." "No," Johnny said. He removed his sunglasses. His eyes were tired but burning. "Some of us aren't allowed to tell the truth on this stage. Some of us are told to smile, to laugh, to act. But this isn't a movie, Jimmy. This is real." Gasps from the audience. A woman in the front row covered her mouth. Jimmy looked uncomfortable. "Well, I think we're getting a little off topic here." "I came here to talk about my work," Johnny said, "about a film I care about. Not to be the punchline of your tired comedy circus." The audience didn't know what to do. Some laughed nervously. Others stayed completely quiet. Johnny stood up slowly. "This industry," he said, "it doesn't just destroy careers. It rewrites reality. And it punishes anyone who remembers the truth." Jimmy looked toward his producers off stage. His face was pale. We're going to take a quick break," but Johnny had already walked off. He didn't look back. The studio was frozen in place. No music played. No jokes followed. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Within minutes, social media exploded. Clips of the moment were everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, YouTube. Hashtag Depp Walks Out was trending across 3 continents. Some people said he was dramatic. Others said he was brave. Some said it was all staged. Others were sure it wasn't. But there was one thing everyone agreed on. Something didn't feel normal. Not just in Johnny's walkout. Not just in the way he stared into the camera before leaving. But in the things he said about truth, about control, about being silenced. Some fans began digging into past interviews. They noticed times when Depp had stopped talking mid-sentence, like he was holding something back. They found older shows, where he looked frustrated as jokes were made about things he didn't laugh at. A few independent journalists began asking new questions. Why did Kimmel bring up the legal stuff again, even though Depp's team asked him not to before the show? Why was the feed cut off faster than usual? Why did the backstage camera lights stay off longer than normal after the walkout? A video. surfaced, a phone recording from someone in the audience. It showed Johnny saying something to Jimmy just before walking off. The mic didn't catch it clearly, but when slowed down and enhanced, it sounded like, you know who owns this place now? The internet lost its mind. Who was who? Was it a joke? Was it a threat? Or ... was it a warning? News outlets picked it up. Headlines ran, Johnny Depp's live meltdown or exposing something bigger. Others went further, stage or signal. What did Johnny really mean? One anonymous tweet caught fire. It simply read, "When artists stop smiling, pay attention." Something had shifted. And the world wasn't ready for the next part. The cameras went black. Backstage, chaos had already begun. Producers yelled into headsets. Assistants ran across the hallway. Security stood unsure whether to intervene. Jimmy Kimmel took off his mic slowly, staring at the floor. His smile was gone. In the hallway outside the studio, Johnny Depp was gone. He had walked straight out the emergency exit into the back lot, past the parked vans and trailers, and into a waiting black SUV. The vehicle sped off before anyone could stop it. Not even his publicist knew where he went. Inside, the air was still thick. Crew members exchanged nervous glances. The director turned to the lead producer and whispered, "Should we call legal?" "No," the producer said. "Not yet." The video of Johnny's walkout had already gone viral. Within 20 minutes, it was trending in 15 countries. Headlines filled Twitter and YouTube. Johnny Depp melts down on live TV. Actor slams Kimmel, storms out, and Depp. Unfiltered, the interview Hollywood didn't want you to see. But beneath the noise, some people noticed something different. It wasn't just a celebrity moment. It felt ... controlled. Too sharp, too precise, like Johnny had planned it. And then came the leak. An anonymous post appeared on a message board used by whistleblowers and digital activists. It showed a screenshot from the backstage security feed. The image was blurry but clear enough. Johnny Depp speaking to Jimmy Kimmel just seconds before. Walking out. There was no audio, but someone had used AI lip-reading tools to estimate what was said. The line matched what fans had guessed earlier. "You know who owns this place now?" Within minutes, Reddit threads exploded. One user, claiming to be a former late-night show writer, posted, "Kimmel hasn't had full control of his guest list since 2022. Studio executives answered to higher circles, now political donors. Intelligence-linked PR firms, even international groups." Another user simply wrote, "This wasn't about a joke. It was about a secret." Meanwhile, across town, a woman named Lena Cruz sat at her desk, watching the clip for the 10th time. She was a former CNN investigative journalist, now independent, funded only by subscribers. She had covered war zones, corrupt judges, and media scandals. But what she saw in Johnny's eyes that night wasn't anger. It was warning. Lena pulled out an old file from her drawer. Years ago, she had worked on a story involving Depp's legal team. Nothing serious, just background checks during his lawsuits. But she remembered one strange thing. One of his lawyers had ties to a retired intelligence officer. That officer, codenamed Falcon, had once briefed the Senate on the manipulation of entertainment platforms. Lena was never allowed to publish the piece. Her editors pulled it the night before it aired. She searched her emails, found the last message Falcon had sent. Subject: "If they cut him off, you'll know it was real." Okay, 2 days before Depp appeared on Kimmel. Lena's hands shook slightly. She stood, grabbed her keys, and headed to her old contact in Glendale, cybersecurity specialist known online as Bite Widow. If Johnny's message was coded, she needed help decoding it. Elsewhere in Los Angeles, Jimmy Kimmel sat alone, in his dressing room. The mirror in front of him reflected more than just his tired eyes. His phone buzzed messages from ABC, Disney, and his own lawyers. But one text stood out. It came from a private number. No name, just a message. "You said too much." He wasn't supposed to go off script. Jimmy stared at it for a long time. Then he locked his phone, took off his suit jacket, and closed the blinds. For the first time in years, he felt afraid. Across the country, strange things began to happen. Several YouTube creators who uploaded the full Depp interview had their videos flagged and removed not for copyright, but for national security violations. A podcast host who defended Depp on air reported that her apartment had been broken into. Nothing was stolen except her hard drive. In New York, an editor at a major paper leaked that they were told to bury any stories suggesting Depp's outburst was political, and Lena. She got her first warning while pulling into a gas station. A white van parked beside her. The driver rolled down the window. A man in sunglasses leaned out. "Ms. Cruz," he said. "You're very curious." She didn't respond. He smiled. "Be careful what you wake up. Some of us prefer things quiet." Then he drove away. Lena stood frozen beside her car. Something was happening, something big. And Johnny Depp had lit the match. Lena Cruz didn't sleep that night. She sat in her one-bedroom apartment surrounded by notes, newspaper clippings, and a digital map filled with pins and red lines. Her laptop screen glowed in the dark, showing paused frames of Johnny Depp's face from the no-deleted footage. She rewound one particular moment again and again. The second he turned to Kimmel and muttered something off mic. That sentence had broken the show, and maybe more than that. Lena played the slowed-down clip for the 100th time. "You know who owns this place now?" What did he mean? The words didn't feel random. They felt like a signal. But a signal to who? She clicked open her secure chat with Byte Widow, the tech expert she had met earlier that day. He had managed to decrypt metadata from the leaked backstage screenshot. There was something strange in the file. Embedded code that spelled out the name Albatross. That wasn't just any word. Lena remembered hearing it years ago in a different context, back when she was covering a closed-door Senate hearing. A whispered term that referred to a hidden influence group made up of former intelligence officials, media bosses, and private investors. They didn't appear in any official records, but people said they existed. They called it the Albatross Syndicate. Ski typed into the chat. "This goes deeper than Kimmel. He's not the target." Depp was sending a warning, Whitewidow replied within seconds. "Then the question is, to who? And what happens next?" Meanwhile, in a luxury hotel in New York, Johnny Depp sat quietly in a private suite. No camera. Cruz, no publicist, no manager. Just a fire burning in the fireplace, casting shadows on the walls. Across from him sat a woman in her 60s, dressed in gray and gold. She had no name on public records. People in his world called her the archivist. "I said what I needed to say," Johnny told her, lighting a cigarette. "Okay, then." The signal. She poured herself tea without looking up. "And they heard you. That's why you need to stay off the radar for a while." Johnny leaned back, exhaling smoke. "They'll come after me harder now. They already are." She handed him a tablet. On the screen were headlines from major networks. Depp, mentally unstable after on-air meltdown. Former actor shows signs of psychological breakdown. Jimmy Kimmel breaks silence. "I was scared for my safety, all lies." "I'm not surprised," Johnny said. "They always smear before they silence." She looked at him carefully. "Do you want to keep going?" Johnny stared into the flames. "I have no choice. I've seen too much. They tried to use me. Now they'll try to erase me." Across the ocean in a London studio, a former MI6 analyst turned whistleblower watched the same video clip. Name was Adrian Cade. For years, he'd studied information warfare, how governments and corporations manipulated what the public believed. He recognized the patterns. "This wasn't about a celebrity feud," Adrian said during a call to an independent journalist. "This was about exposure. Swan Depp or the people behind him are trying to reveal who really controls the narrative." "Who's the target?" the journalist asked. Adrian's voice went quiet. "The audience," he said. "They're the target." Always have been. Back in Los Angeles, the tension behind closed doors was rising fast. Jimmy? Kimmel sat in an emergency meeting with executives from ABC and the network's parent company. A dark-suited man, not from entertainment but from government relations, had joined the table. His name was Dalton Shaw. "You let him go off script," Dalton said coldly. Jimmy raised his voice. He was emotional. "I couldn't predict." That Dalton didn't blink. "Your job wasn't to predict. Your job was to control." Jimmy stood up. "I'm a comedian, not a security contractor." Dalton got up too much slower. "Not anymore." The room went silent. One of the executives broke the tension. "We're shifting public attention. Painting Depp as unstable. The algorithm is already redirecting search terms. By tomorrow, his outburst will be just another celebrity tantrum." But not everyone was convinced. Inside the social media space, resistance was growing. Hashtags like #TruthOnTV, #LetJohnny Speak, and #WhoOwnsTheStage started trending despite efforts to suppress them. Independent creators were uploading frame-by-frame breakdowns of the footage. Podcasts were interviewing body language experts. One guest said, "Look at Johnny's eyes. That's not rage. That's someone who knows too much." Lena Cruz watched it all unfold from her living room. Then her phone buzzed. A new message. No sender. No ID. It simply read, "Meet me where it all started." JD. She froze. Johnny was reaching out. But where had it all started? Oh, she opened her digital folder, digging through old interviews, articles, and case files. Then it clicked. Venice Beach, 2017. The last time Johnny gave an unscripted, uncensored interview, and the last time he had mentioned something that made her editor kill the story. Back then, he had said, "Hollywood is just the mask. You should look at the face behind it." Lena grabbed her coat and keys. This story wasn't over. It was just beginning. The sun was just starting to fall behind the ocean when Lena Cruz parked her car near the Venice Beach boardwalk. It was quieter than usual. The shops were closing, the street performers packing up, and the tourists moving on. She walked past the graffiti-covered walls and into the alley behind a small cafe. This place hadn't changed much since 2017. She remembered it clearly, the last time Johnny Depp had spoken with full honesty, away from studio lights and handlers. That night, he'd said something she never forgot. If they can turn the truth into fiction, they can turn fiction into law. She didn't understand it then. She did now. A figure stepped from the shadows, trench coat, hat low over his face. "He didn't say her name. He didn't have to, Johnny," she asked. Softly, he nodded once, then motioned for her to follow. They entered the back door of the cafe and moved up a narrow staircase. At the top was a small empty room, curtains drawn, a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. "This is safe," Johnny said, sitting at a wooden table. "For now." Lena sat across from him. "I didn't think I'd hear from you again." "Needed time," Johnny said. "It's time to see who would try to silence you first." Lena took out her phone to record, but Johnny shook his head. "No devices. There, listening always." She slowly turned it off. "I need to know what this is really about," Lena said. "Not the show. The headlines. What are they hiding?" Johnny's expression darkened. "There's a reason they kept pushing me to do soft interviews. Laugh, smile, avoid questions. But I've seen what happens behind the cameras. The partnerships, the documents, the deals." "Deals?" Lena leaned forward. "With who?" Johnny tapped the table. "Media owners, tech giants, political brokers. They built an alliance years ago. Not official, not public, but real." Lena's breath caught. "The Albatross Syndicate?" she asked. Johnny nodded. "They use actors like me as shields. Distract the public, feed the algorithm, while they pass laws that no one reads and change narratives before anyone notices." Lena was shaking her head. "But why come forward now? I risk it." Johnny looked her dead in the eyes. Because they're planning something bigger. Something global. He slid a folded paper across the table. Lena opened it. It wasn't a printed document, it was handwritten. At the top, Project Scepter. It listed locations, names, and 2 dates. One was next week. They're merging private intelligence. Firms with broadcast media, Johnny explained. They want to create a news system where every headline is approved before it airs. Not by the government, but by corporate councils. Lena read the note again. One name stood out. Roland Marcus, current advisor to the International Communications Council. Former CIA. Also on the board of the same studio that produced Jimmy Kimmel Live. Her hands trembled. You knew this before the interview? She asked. Johnny nodded. That was my only chance. Go off script, say enough to cause noise. Force their hand. And what now? Lena whispered. They're erasing you. Every article, every platform. Let them, Johnny said. It proves I'm right. Suddenly, loud footsteps echoed from outside. Johnny jumped to the window. A black SUV pulled up across the street. 2 men in dark suits got out. They found us, he said. Lena froze. Johnny grabbed a backpack from the corner and tossed her a USB drive. Everything's on there. Names, files, video. Get it out. What about you? She asked. He smiled faintly. I'll give them something to chase. Before she could stop him, he opened the back door and disappeared. Down the fire escape. Lena clutched the drive tightly and ran down the stairs, slipping out through the alley just before the agents reached the cafe. That night, Lena sat alone in her apartment staring at the USB. The footage inside was disturbing. Video calls. Between executives and politicians, private documents marked confidential internal communications control, and a voice memo. It was Jimmy Kimmel. In the memo, he said, I didn't want this job. But once they show you the footage once, they tell you what happens if you don't comply. You stop being a host. You become an actor. The real ones are behind the curtain. Lena wept. Not because of fear, but because now she had proof. And she knew she would have to use it. The next morning, she contacted 3 independent journalists, one in London, one in Berlin, and one in Brazil. It had been 36 hours since the leak. 36 hours since Project Truth Stream went live, crashing servers and waking governments. Lena Cruz hadn't slept. Her eyes burned. Her hands trembled every time she opened a new email. Hundreds, pouring in from activists, whistleblowers, and terrified insiders. Most messages thanked her. Some warned her. A few told her to run. She sat in a small hotel room in San Francisco now, far from the studio lights and newsroom comforts. The walls were thin. The lock on the door felt useless. But it was the only safe place she had. On the screen in front of her, the site's latest headline blinked. Breaking. Project Scepter confirmed by former State Department advisor. It was real. A man named Elliot Hazan, ex-policy advisor, who had disappeared 2 years earlier, had come forward. He confirmed the existence of an international alliance between entertainment corporations, private intelligence firms, and lobbying groups. Their goal: narrative control. The truth wasn't hidden anymore. Now it was dangerous. In a dark boardroom in New York, high above the skyline, 6 men sat in silence around a long glass table. No names, no introductions. Just cold faces lit by screens showing news reports and encrypted maps. One man finally spoke. We underestimated him. The others didn't respond. The man continued, voice calm and quiet. Johnny Depp was never just an actor. He had access, influence, but more importantly, he had nothing left to lose. Someone tapped a tablet. Do we activate protocol? The room fell even more silent. Then the answer came, yes. That same hour, in an abandoned theater in Chicago, Johnny Depp stood alone on a creaking wooden stage. No cameras, no makeup, just a light hanging above him. He looked like a man worn down by time but still burning inside. Across from him sat Adrian Cade, the ex-Me6 whistleblower who had flown in from London after reading the Truthstream files. Johnny didn't say much at first. He let the silence stretch. Then, slowly, he spoke. I told them years ago. I told the studios, the lawyers, the politicians, you can use me, but I won't lie for you. Adrian nodded. You were the perfect mask. I played pirates and monsters, but the real ones were at the table next to me during fundraisers. They shook my hand and whispered what to. Say during interviews, I used to believe them, till they showed me the script they expected me to read. Adrian frowned. What script? Johnny looked up, eyes steady. Key. They wanted me to announce a new global media pact, a campaign that looked like it was about peace, culture, justice, but it was a control net. Every film, every song, every news headline would be filtered by their counsel. And when you refused? Adrian asked. They said they'd break. Me, slowly. They tried. I lost movies, money, reputation. But I still had my voice. Adrian stared at him. So why now? Why the Kimmel show? Johnny exhaled deeply. Because that was their stage. I knew if I said something, they're off. Script they'd panic. They did. Elsewhere, inside a quiet federal building in D.C., an emergency meeting was underway. The FBI's cyber division was now officially involved. But not in the way Lena had hoped. Instead of protecting whistleblowers, they were being told to contain the leak. Internal memos showed instructions to trace upload sources, shut down mirrors, and label Project Truthstream as foreign disinformation. One agent, Erin Yates, sat uneasily as she read the memo again. Something didn't feel right. Why was the Bureau siding with corporate networks instead of verifying the files? She clicked open the video from Truthstream Johnny's unseen interview outtakes. It wasn't a rant. It was measured, specific, and backed by dates and documents. Then she clicked on the second file, a recording from a closed-door summit. Her jaw dropped. It showed representatives from several tech companies, a famous talk show producer, and a man wearing a Senate pin discussing a transition timeline for merging data. Analysis tools with broadcast news scripting systems. This wasn't a conspiracy theory, it was protocol. Erin stood up and locked her office door. Then she opened a private email and typed one sentence. I'm in. Where do I go? She hit send. Lena received the message instantly. Her team was growing journalists, techs, former analysts, even quiet allies inside the system. But so was the threat. That night, the studio that aired Jimmy Kimmel Live released a statement calling the Truthstream files dangerous, manipulated, and the product of a disturbed actor's imagination. They blamed Johnny for a coordinated misinformation campaign. It wasn't just a PR strategy, it was a setup. A coordinated attempt to discredit the leak before more people believed it. Lena looked at the USB Johnny had given her again. She hadn't opened the last folder. It was titled Black Thread. With a deep breath, she clicked. Inside were 10 documents. One of them, labeled Stage 5 Directive, contained detailed plans for mass public influence campaigns starting next month, targeting not just media but educational apps, influencer contracts, and even video games. It ended with this line: the audience must never know they are watching the performance. Lena leaned back in her chair, eyes wide with horror. Johnny had risked everything. Now it was her turn. The curtain wasn't just lifting. It was burning. The world had started to split. One half called Project Truthstream a dangerous conspiracy. The other called it a revolution. Johnny Depp's moment on live TV was no longer just a scandal. It had become a symbol of defiance, a symbol of how one man's silence could shake an entire system until he broke it. Lena Cruz watched the chaos grow from the same San Francisco hotel room. The news networks were all over the place. CNN debated the file's credibility. Fox News called it celebrity-driven paranoia. BBC kept asking why Jimmy Kimmel hadn't returned to the air since Depp stormed off. But the real war wasn't on television. It was happening behind closed doors, in back channels, and on encrypted phones. At 2:14 a.m., Lena's burner buzzed. "Unknown number," she answered. Distorted voice said, "We have a problem. Depp has gone dark." Lena sat up. He was just in Chicago with Adrian Cade. Not anymore. His last known location was a safe house near Milwaukee. The Syndicate. Found it? She froze. Is he alive? A pause. We don't know. The line went dead. In a high-rise building in Washington, D.C., the group behind Project Scepter had stopped pretending. The leaks had forced their hand. Executives now sat openly with government advisors. Lawyers drafted emergency executive orders, new policies, to fast-track content regulation in the interest of national stability. The meetings were private, but someone inside had started leaking audio clips to TruthStream. In one of them, a voice was heard saying, "This isn't about silencing Johnny Depp. This is about making sure there's never another Johnny Depp." It was chilling. They weren't just reacting. They were preparing for war. Across the world, in a quiet Berlin apartment, Adrian Cade sat staring at the screen. He knew this playbook. He'd written part of it back when he was still in MI6's Strategic Influence Division. He knew exactly what came next. Manufactured scandals, fake psychiatric reports, planted stories. And then, disappearances. Adrian checked his secure tracker. Again, Johnny's last signal had gone dark 3 hours ago. Poured himself a drink with a shaky hand. Not out of fear, but guilt. He had dragged Johnny into this deeper than anyone knew. Years ago, before Johnny went public, Adrian had shown him the original Scepter papers. Johnny had said, "This is theater." But no one knows it's scripted. Adrian hadn't expected him to take it personally, but he had. Johnny had decided. Not just to leak, but to perform the truth on the world's biggest stage. And now, they had silenced him. Unless Adrian opened the hidden folder on his laptop. DEPP_act_final.mov. It was a video Johnny had recorded in secret, a message to release in case he disappeared. Adrian hesitated. Then he hit upload. Back in San Francisco, Lena was still staring at her screen when the video alert popped. Up on TruthStream's dashboard, its unverified Depp Messaggio release flag. She clicked. The screen went black. Then Johnny's face appeared. He looked tired, unshaven, but steady. "If you're watching this, I'm gone. Maybe just hiding. Maybe worse. But I need you to understand something. I didn't walk off that stage because of a joke. I walked off because I knew they would never let me speak freely again. You're not crazy for feeling the world's gone fake. It has. It's all production, carefully written, carefully directed. And if you refuse to play your part, they cut your scene. But here's the good news. You're the audience. You hold the power. Without your attention, the show falls apart. So stop clapping for lies. Stop laughing at cruelty. Stop pretending the people reading the script are the ones in control. Tell them you're done watching. That's how it ends. Then the video cut out. No music, no credits. Just silence. The reaction was immediate. By dawn, the clip had over 80 million views across alternative platforms. Hashtags like #TheLastScene and #DeppSignal now trended worldwide. Protests broke out in front of several major studios. Online creators released videos pledging to leave corporate contracts. Former news anchors came forward with their own stories of censorship. The system was no longer bleeding quietly. Lena Cruz watched the video again, paused it, rewound it, stared at every frame. There was no mistake. The man whispering into Jimmy Kimmel's earpiece wasn't part of the show's crew. He wasn't entertainment. He was a known member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Senator Thorne. A powerful figure often seen on TV discussing foreign propaganda threats and narrative warfare. Only now he was behind a comedy stage, directing live television like a military operation. Lena's throat felt dry. This wasn't just a case of censorship or celebrity mistreatment. This was state-level media control on American soil. In real time, she clicked a screenshot from the footage and attached it to a draft article titled Stage Managed: How US Intelligence Silenced a Global Truth Bomb. She hit publish. Within minutes, the site was under attack. Digital blackouts hit certain regions, comments were disabled. Mirror sites were flooded with spam. Lena's VPN pinged new surveillance routes. But it didn't matter. The story was already out. People were reading it, some in disbelief, others in rage. All across the country, something had cracked open. In Los Angeles, a group of independent filmmakers hacked into a major streaming platform and replaced a commercial trailer with Johnny's last monologue video. It played unannounced in front of millions before the platform shut it down. In New York, protesters held up signs outside studio headquarters. "We're done watching the script is broken. WHERE is Johnny." Even in small towns, artists, podcasters, and teachers began boycotting corporate licenses. Libraries printed copies of Project TruthStream. University students uploaded lectures to underground sites. And in Washington, Senator Thorne was now under official investigation. Caught on tape, caught on the wrong side of history. But still powerful, still dangerous. 3 days later, Lena received a package. No return address, no note. Inside a flash drive, and a phone with one number saved. She plugged in the drive and watched. It was grainy again, but clearer than before. Johnny Depp, alive, sitting in a small cabin somewhere. Maybe in the mountains, maybe abroad. He looked different, beard longer, eyes quieter, but focused. If you're seeing this, then the lie is breaking. You did that, not me. It just cracked the surface. He took a breath. I want to tell you a story when they never let me finish on air. Years ago, I was offered a deal, not for a role, for silence. In exchange, they'd rebuild my image. Give me the movies, the press, a comeback. I said no, because once you take their script, you can't ever stop performing. He leaned closer to the camera, so I walked off. Kay, they tried to bury me with it, but you dug it up. And now the question is, what do you do with the truth? He smiled faintly. Don't look for me. Look at each other. That's where the real show ends, or begins. The video ended. Lena stared at the frozen screen, then picked up the phone. She dialed the saved number. It rang once. Then a voice answered, "You've proven you're not afraid." It was Adrian Cade. "We need to finish this," Lena said. 1 month later, a special international tribunal opened in The Hague. Not for war crimes, but for media manipulation on a global scale. The leaked files, testimony from former advisors, and the video evidence from the Kimmel incident had forced the world to pay attention. Jimmy Kimmel himself was subpoenaed. He testified under oath. And when asked why he had cut the cameras that night, he said one thing: "I didn't. Someone else did. I just played along because I was afraid." The silence in the courtroom that followed was heavy. Not with shame, but recognition. The world had been playing along. By the end of the week, TruthStream became a global news network, crowdfunded, independent, run by journalists who had walked away from traditional media. Lena was now its chief editor. Adrian ran the investigations desk, and Johnny, no one knew, hadn't reappeared. But every once in a while, someone in a crowd would claim they saw him at a bookstore, in a desert town, on a train, quiet, watching, and once carved into a cafe table in Istanbul. Someone found the words, "Not every story ends with applause. Some just begin with truth." It went viral. In the end, the walk-off wasn't the scandal. It was the alarm bell. The curtain hadn't just lifted. It had fallen. And behind it, people found each other no longer actors in someone else's play, but awake, and finally, unscripted. 6 months later, the world had changed, but not how people expected. Governments still stood. Networks still aired shows. Studios still made movies. But underneath, something was different. Something quieter, like the final echo of a storm that left behind a cracked foundation. People listened differently now. They watched differently. And they questioned everything. Johnny Depp had not returned. No more videos, no statements, no appearances. Some believed he was dead. Others said he was in hiding, somewhere off-grid, writing the full story in his own voice. Lena Cruz, sitting in the new TruthStream studio, a modest space above a reclaimed bookstore in downtown. DC still received encrypted messages signed, only with a symbol, every time a major institution tried to bury a story, whether it was about surveillance. Silenced scientists or military lobbying, one of these messages would arrive. Each with a name, a place, a thread to pull. It was him. It had to be. She never tried to find him. She didn't need to. He was doing what he always said mattered most, helping people think for themselves. That morning, Lena received a video clip. No subject line, no watermark. It was grainy, but not old, shot from a handheld device. A private room, white walls, one window, and in the center, Jimmy Kimmel. He looked tired, pale, nothing like his glossy TV self. He was alone. The voice behind the camera asked, "Do you regret it?" Kimmel sighed. "Yes." "Why did you do it?" Kimmel looked directly at the camera. No smirk. No joke. "I didn't think it mattered," he said. "I didn't think people would care who pulled the strings. I thought they'd just want to laugh and go home." A pause. "But Johnny reminded me that laughter without truth is just noise. Would you say it was all real?" Kimmel hesitated, then nodded. "All of it." The camera turned off. Lena uploaded the clip. No edits, no music, no headlines. Just the truth. It went viral within hours, not because it was explosive, but because it was honest. It was the first time people saw a former media puppet speak without performance. Meanwhile, in a border town cafe in Mexico, a man sat alone reading an old newspaper, his hat tipped low, his fingers stained with ink. He smiled as the waiter handed him the check with a note scribbled on the back. "We saw the clip. You were right." He didn't sign the receipt. Just left behind a folded page from a banned book, one line circled in red ink. "The first step to freedom is knowing who wrote your lines." Then he walked into the street and vanished into the crowd. Back in D.C., Lena stepped outside. The TruthStream building. She looked up at the billboards lining the street, still glowing, still sponsored. But people weren't just watching anymore. They were thinking, they were talking. And sometimes they were turning them off. The revolution hadn't come with riots, it came with a remote control. And the decision to finally say, "I won't play my part anymore." The story of Johnny Depp's walk-off was no longer just about a man or a show. It was about the moment the audience stood up and realized they weren't just watching the world change. They were part of the rewrite. The screen fades to black. One final sentence appears. Truth was never canceled. It just needed a louder signal.